The corridor was silent, except for the echo of footsteps on marble. It was 3 in the morning when Sergeant James Thornton heard something he should never have heard. Sound that didn't belong in the private wing of Buckingham Palace. Metal scraping against wood. Soft, deliberate, coming from the Queen's personal chambers. His hand moved to his radio, then stopped. The Queen had passed away just 48 hours earlier. The room should have been locked, sealed, untouched, until the official inventory. Yet someone was inside. James had served the royal family for 17 years. He'd stood guard through storms and celebrations, through weddings and funerals. But nothing had prepared him for what he was about to witness. He moved closer to the door. The hallway lights were dimmed for the night. Shadows stretched long across the walls. His heart pounded as he reached for the handle. It turned. Unlocked. The door opened without a sound. Inside, the room was bathed in moonlight streaming through tall windows. And there, kneeling beside the Queen's personal jewelry cabinet, was someone he recognized immediately. Queen Consort Camilla. Her back was to him. Her hands were moving quickly through velvet-lined drawers. Before you hear what happens next. If you love real stories that reveal what happens behind closed doors, hit that subscribe button. You won't believe where this goes. James froze. Every instinct told him to step back, to pretend he hadn't seen anything. But his duty was clear. He cleared his throat. Your Majesty. Camilla spun around. Her face went pale in the moonlight. In her hands was a diamond brooch, one James recognized from countless photographs. The Queen had worn it to her coronation. It was priceless, irreplaceable, and it definitely shouldn't have been in Camilla's hands at 3 in the morning. Sergeant Thornton. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her. Fear, anger, calculation.
Ow.
I didn't expect anyone to be patrolling this wing. With respect, ma'am, no one should be in this room. The inventory hasn't been completed. The late Queen's belongings are under protection. Camilla stood slowly. She placed the brooch on the dresser, but kept her hand near it. I'm the Queen Consort now. I have every right to be here. These items belong to the crown. They belong to the royal collection, ma'am. It must be documented before anything is moved. James kept his voice level, professional, but inside alarm bells were screaming. Camilla's expression changed. The shock faded. Something harder took its place. Are you questioning my authority, Sergeant? I'm following protocol, ma'am. She moved toward him. Her presence filled the room. Protocol. How interesting. Tell me, Sergeant Thornton, do you know what happens to guards who make accusations against members of the royal family, who spread rumors, who forget their place? The threat hung in the air like smoke. James felt sweat form on his palms. This wasn't just about a brooch. Something bigger was happening. Something that could destroy careers, or worse. I'm not making accusations, ma'am. I'm simply here to ensure the late Queen's possessions remain secure. Then we understand each other. Camilla walked past him toward the door. She paused in the doorway. I was never here, Sergeant, and you never saw me, for your own good. She disappeared into the darkness. James stood alone in the Queen's chamber. The brooch still lay on the dresser where she'd placed it, but when he looked closer at the cabinet, his blood ran cold. Several pieces were missing. Empty spaces in the velvet where jewelry should have been. He had a choice to make, only seconds to make it. Asterisk James reached for his radio again. His finger hovered over the call button. One press, and he could report what he'd seen. But Camilla's words echoed in his mind. For your own good, he'd heard stories. Guards who'd witnessed things they shouldn't have. They were transferred, reassigned to remote posts. Their careers quietly ended. Some even faced criminal charges for theft they didn't commit. The system protected those at the top. Always, but this was different. This was the late Queen's jewelry. Her legacy. Items that belonged to the nation, not to any one person. James made his decision. He pulled out his phone and took 3 quick photos of the cabinet. The empty spaces, the brooch on the dresser, evidence. Then he carefully placed the brooch back in its proper position. He closed the cabinet, locked it, and sealed the room exactly as it should have been, from the beginning. By sunrise, he was sitting in the office of Commander Patricia Rothwell. She was the head of palace security, a woman with 30 years of service, steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. You're telling me the Queen Consort was in the late Queen's chambers? At 3 a.m., taking jewelry? Her voice was flat, controlled. But James could see her hands tighten on her desk. Yes, ma'am. I have photographs. Patricia studied the images on his phone. Her jaw clenched. This is catastrophic. Thornton, do you understand what you're asking me to do? I'm asking you to protect the Crown's property, ma'am. It's just like our oath says. She stood and walked to the window. Below, the palace grounds were coming to life. Tourists were already gathering at the gates. The world mourned the Queen, and inside these walls, something rotten was growing. If we pursue this, they'll destroy you, Patricia said quietly. They'll say you're lying, seeking attention. They'll dig up everything in your past, your family's past. They have the power to erase you completely. I know, ma'am. And you're willing to risk that? James thought of his daughter, 8 years old. She was so proud when he put on his uniform. She told her friends her daddy protected the Queen. How could he look at her and explain that he'd stayed silent when it mattered most? Yes, ma'am. I am. Patricia turned from the window. For the first time since he'd entered, she smiled. Small, sad. Then we do this properly, quietly. We document everything. We build an airtight case. We pray we're not both unemployed by next week. Over the next 3 days, they worked in secret. Patricia accessed the security footage. The cameras had been disabled in that corridor, not broken. It's disabled. Someone with authority had ordered it. The timing was too convenient to be coincidence. They pulled inventory records, cross-referenced with historical catalogs. 7 pieces were missing from the late Queen's personal collection, including a sapphire necklace worth millions, a tiara that had belonged to Queen Victoria, and diamond earrings given to the Queen on her wedding day. But they needed more than records and photos. They needed proof of where the jewelry had gone. That's when Patricia made a connection. She remembered something. Camilla has a daughter, Laura. She's getting married next spring. James felt pieces clicking into place. You think I think a mother wants her daughter to shine? Better way than with jewelry fit for a real queen. They needed confirmation. Patricia called in a favor from someone in the palace household staff, someone who'd worked there even longer than she had. Margaret Chen, 80 years old and sharp as a blade. She'd dressed the late Queen for 40 years. She knew every piece of jewelry in that collection. Margaret arrived that evening, small, thin. Her hands trembled slightly from age, but her eyes were fierce. Patricia showed her the photographs. Margaret's face crumpled. She touched the screen with one shaking finger. These were Her Majesty's favorites. She wore this brooch when Prince William was born. This necklace was for state dinners, she told me once. She told me these would go to Catherine someday, for when William became king. They're gone, Margaret. Taken. A woman, Margaret whispered. The venom in her voice was shocking. She always wanted what wasn't hers, always looking at the jewelry with hungry eyes. But Her Majesty saw through her. She made arrangements, legal arrangements, to protect everything. James leaned forward. What kind of arrangements? The Queen updated her will 3 months before she died. I was there when her lawyer came. She was very specific. The personal jewelry collection was to be catalogued and distributed according to her wishes. With witnesses. With legal oversight, no one, not even the king, could override it. Patricia and James exchanged glances. If that was true, then Camilla hadn't just stolen jewelry. She'd violated the late Queen's final wishes. She'd broken the law. But proving it meant going up against the second most powerful woman in Britain. A woman who now wore a crown. A woman who could make them disappear with a single phone call. The office suddenly felt very small, very quiet. And the danger felt very real. The next morning, everything changed. James arrived for his shift to find his locker had been searched. Nothing was missing. But the message was clear. They were watching him. Commander Rothwell pulled him aside in the corridor. She kept her voice low. Someone knows we're investigating. I got a call this morning from the private secretary's office. They're asking questions about you. Your performance? Your reliability? They're building a case against me. Worse, they're laying groundwork. So when they come for you, everyone will believe you deserved it. James felt his stomach drop. What do? We move faster than they expect. Tonight, the king is hosting a private dinner for family only. Camilla will be there. Her daughter Laura will be there. If Laura is wearing any of the missing pieces, we'll have our proof. How do we get eyes on a private family dinner? Patricia's smile was grim. We don't. But Margaret does. She's been asked to help with Laura's wardrobe. The girl apparently wants to make an impression. That evening, James couldn't eat. Couldn't focus. He walked his patrol route on autopilot while his mind raced. If Margaret saw the jewelry and confirmed it, they'd have what they needed. But it would also mean confronting the royal family. Starting a scandal that could shake the monarchy itself. His phone buzzed at 8 p.m., a text from Patricia. 3 words. Get here now. He found her in her office with Margaret. The old woman was crying, silent tears running down her weathered cheeks. She was wearing them, Margaret whispered. The sapphire necklace. The Queen's necklace. The one she wore to meet President Kennedy. It was around that girl's neck like it was costume jewelry from a shop. You're certain? James asked gently. I cleaned that necklace with my own hands 1,000 times. I know every stone, every link in the chain. It was Her Majesty's. And now it's stolen property around the neck of someone who has no right to it. Patricia was already on her phone. I'm calling the Royal Collection Trust. They have authority over the Crown's property. They can launch an official investigation, but before she could dial, the office door burst open. 2 men in dark suits entered. Behind them came someone James recognized. Sir Malcolm Pemberton, the King's private secretary, one of the most powerful men in the palace, Commander Rothwell, Sergeant Thornton. I think we need to have a conversation. His voice was ice. His eyes were colder. Patricia slowly set down her phone. Sir Malcolm, this is irregular. You should have what's irregular as 2 members of Palace. Security conducting an unauthorized investigation into the Queen Consort. What's irregular is taking photographs of private chambers without permission. What's irregular is involving civilian staff in matters above their station. He knew everything. Every step they'd taken, someone had been reporting back to him. Or worse, they'd been monitored from the beginning. Margaret stood. For a small woman, she suddenly seemed to fill the room. Irregular? I'll tell you what's irregular. Stealing from a dead queen. Violating her final wishes. Treating the Crown's property like it's yours to give away. Mrs. Chun, you're overwrought. You're elderly. Grief does strange things to memory. Perhaps it's time you retired. Don't you threaten me, boy. I changed your nappies when you were small. I know exactly what I saw. And I know the law. The late Queen made specific provisions. Legal provisions. You can't wish them away. Sir Malcolm's expression flickered. Just for a second, uncertainty. That's when James knew they had him. He was bluffing, playing for time, hoping they'd back down. The Queen Consort, Sir Malcolm said slowly, was selecting jewelry appropriate for a family dinner. Items from the shared royal collection. Everything was documented and approved. If you're suggesting otherwise, you're accusing Her Majesty of theft. That's not just wrong. It's criminal defamation. Patricia stepped forward. Then you won't mind if we verify that documentation. The inventory logs? The approval forms. They should all exist if this was legitimate. So those are private royal documents. You don't have clearance. The Royal Collection Trust does. They have authority over every piece in the Crown's possession. They can verify in minutes whether the proper procedures were followed. Unless you'd like to explain why we shouldn't call them? The silence stretched. Sir Malcolm's jaw worked. The 2 men behind him shifted uncomfortably. Everyone in the room knew what was really happening. A standoff, with careers and reputations hanging in the balance. Finally, Sir Malcolm spoke. This matter will be resolved internally. At the highest levels, the 3 of you will sign non-disclosure agreements. You will never speak of this again. In return, your positions will be secure. Your silence will be rewarded. And the jewelry. James heard himself ask, the pieces taken from the late Queen's collection? What happens to those? Will be returned. Quietly. An administrative error will be blamed. No one will be embarrassed. Everyone walks away intact. It was a deal. Probably the best deal they'd get. They could save their jobs, keep their pensions, avoid the fight that would destroy them. All they had to do was stay quiet while the people in power covered up the truth. James looked at Patricia, then at Margaret. He saw the same question in their eyes. The same struggle. They could win this battle, but lose the war. Or they could do what was easy and live with the compromise. But then Margaret spoke. Her voice was stronger than James had ever heard it. No, Sir Malcolm blinked. Excuse me? I said no. I won't sign anything. I won't be silent. The Queen trusted me for 40 years. She told me things. She showed me her will. She made me promise to protect what mattered, and I'll honor that promise, even if it costs me everything. The old woman stood up straighter. In that moment, James saw why the late Queen had kept her close for so long. Margaret Chen had more courage than anyone else in the palace, and she'd just declared war on the crown itself. Sir Malcolm's face turned red. Mrs. Chen, you're making a terrible mistake. The Queen Consort has offered you a graceful exit. If I refuse, then what? You'll fire an 80-year-old woman? Drag me through courts. Let the world watch you bully someone who served the late Queen with devotion. Go ahead, I dare you. James felt something shift in the room. Margaret had called their bluff. The palace couldn't risk the optics. A beloved servant of the late Queen being punished for protecting her legacy. The press would devour them. Patricia cleared her throat. Mrs. Chen makes an excellent point. Any action taken against her would raise questions. Questions about why she's being silenced. Questions that would require answers. Sir Malcolm's eyes narrowed. You're threatening to go public. We're stating facts, Patricia replied calmly. The late Queen's will specify exact distribution of her personal jewelry collection. That's a legal document. If items from that collection have been moved without proper authorization, it's not an internal palace matter. It's a violation of probate law. The executors of her estate would have to be informed. The king is the executor. The king is one of 3 executors. The others are the Archbishop of Canterbury and the late Queen's personal solicitor, both of whom take their duties very seriously. Both of whom would demand a full accounting if they learned items were missing. James watched Sir Malcolm process this. The man was calculating, weighing options. Looking for an angle? Finally, he spoke. What do you want? The truth, Margaret said simply. And justice for the Queen who deserved better. Impossible. Do you understand what you're asking? The scandal alone would what? Patricia interrupted. Embarrass the Queen Consort. She should be embarrassed. She committed theft. From the one person who should have been sacred to her. Sir Malcolm looked at the 2 men with him. Some silent communication passed between them. Then he turned back. I need to make a call. Don't leave this office. Don't speak to anyone. Give me 1 hour. He left. The suited men followed. The door closed with a heavy click. James heard a lock turn. They were prisoners now. Margaret sank into a chair. The bravado drained from her face. Did I just make everything worse? You were magnificent, Patricia said softly. You spoke truth to power. Not many people have that courage. Courage or foolishness. I'm not sure there's a difference anymore. They waited. Minutes crawled by. James paced. Patricia made notes. Margaret sat very still, her hands folded in her lap. The office felt like a cell. Outside, the palace continued its normal rhythms. Guards changed shifts. Staff prepared rooms. Tourists took photographs. No one knew that 3 people were locked in an office waiting to learn their fate. 40 minutes later, the door opened. But it wasn't Sir Malcolm who entered. It was Prince William, the heir to the throne. Future king. His face was grave. Mrs. Chen, Commander Rothwell, Sergeant Thornton. He nodded to each of them. I've been informed of the situation. I needed to hear it directly from you, Mrs. Chen, what did you see tonight? Margaret's voice was steady. Your mother's sapphire necklace. The one she wore to meet President Kennedy in 1961. It was around Miss Laura's neck at dinner. I'm certain of it, Your Royal Highness. I've handled that necklace hundreds of times. I'd stake my life on the identification. William's jaw tightened. And you're certain it was from my grandmother's personal collection? Not from the general royal collection? Absolutely certain, sir. Her Majesty kept it in her private chamber. She wore it only on the most significant occasions. It was meant to go to Margaret stopped. Looked away. To my wife, William finished quietly. I know my grandmother told me herself. 6 months before she died, she showed me a list. Items she wanted specific people to have. That necklace was meant for Catherine. The room went silent. This wasn't just theft anymore. It was personal. Family betrayal on the deepest level. William walked to the window. His shoulders were rigid. My grandmother spent her final months planning, making sure her legacy would be protected, that the things she treasured would go to people she loved, and within days of her death someone violated those wishes. Your Royal Highness, Patricia said carefully, we have evidence, photographs, documentation, but pursuing this will create a constitutional crisis. The Queen Consort is my father's wife, not my queen, not my family. The bitterness in his voice was shocking. You think I don't know what she is? What she's always been? My grandmother tolerated her for my father's happiness, but she never trusted her. Never. He turned to face them. His eyes were haunted. I was 10 years old when my mother died. My grandmother held me while I cried. She promised me that one day justice would come, not the kind in courts or newspapers. Real justice, the kind where truth wins. James found himself speaking. Sir, if we do this, if we expose this, the damage to the monarchy will be less than the damage of staying silent. William cut him off. My grandmother taught me that. The crown survives by being worthy of respect, not by covering up crimes, not by protecting people who steal from the dead. He pulled out his phone, made a call. Archbishop. It's William. I need you at the palace. Now. Yes, it's urgent. It concerns my grandmother's estate. There's been a serious breach. He ended the call. Looked at the three of them. Here's what's going to happen. The Archbishop and the solicitor will arrive within the hour. We'll conduct a full inventory of my grandmother's personal collection. Every piece will be accounted for. Anything missing will be documented. And then we'll have a very uncomfortable conversation with my father and his wife. Your father may not support this, Patricia warned. My father will do what's right, or he'll do it alone. Without me, without my brother, without the support of the people who actually matter. William's voice was steel. This ends tonight. One way or another. Margaret started crying again. But these were different tears. Relief, vindication, hope. William crossed the room and took her hands. You loved my grandmother? You protected her. Even when it was dangerous. I won't forget that. No matter what happens. The next hour was chaos. The Archbishop arrived. Then the solicitor. A serious man named Charles Whitmore who carried leather cases full of documents. They gathered in the late Queen's chambers. The very room where James had first seen Camilla. They opened the cabinets, cross-referenced the inventory, and confirmed what everyone already knew. 7 pieces were missing, worth a combined £40 million. But the monetary value was nothing compared to the historical and personal significance. These weren't just jewels. They were pieces of history, gifts from world leaders. Heirlooms passed through generations. Items worn at coronations and weddings and moments that had shaped the nation, and they were gone. Stolen by someone who should have been their guardian. Charles Whitmore documented everything with meticulous care. Photographs, measurements of empty spaces, written descriptions of each missing piece. The Archbishop stood beside him, his face growing darker with each discovery. This is unconscionable, the Archbishop said finally. These items were held in trust, protected by centuries of tradition. The late Queen's wishes were explicit, legal, binding. This isn't just theft. It's a violation of sacred duty. William stood at the window, his back to the room. "Where's my father?" Being informed, Whitmore said quietly, "Along with the Queen Consort, they're being asked to join us." "Along with Miss Laura?" asked or ordered. "Both, Your Royal Highness." 20 minutes later, they arrived. King Charles entered first. His face was ashen. Behind him came Camilla. Her expression was carefully neutral, controlled. But James saw her eyes flick to the open jewelry. Cabinet, recognition. Fear Laura followed last. Young, beautiful, and around her neck hung the sapphire necklace. Even under the room's soft lighting, it sparkled. Unmistakable. William turned from the window. His eyes locked on the necklace. "Take it off." Laura's hand flew to her throat. "What?" "William, this is my grandmother's. Stolen from her collection. Taken without authorization. Take it off."
Yeah.
Charles stepped forward. "William, please. Let's not be hasty. I'm sure there's an explanation." "The explanation?" William said coldly. "Is that your wife stole from my grandmother's personal collection? She took items meant for other people, items protected by a legal will, and she gave them to her daughter like they were party favors." Camilla's mask cracked. "How dare you speak to me that way? I'm your queen, you're my father's wife, nothing more. And right now, you're a thief who violated the last wishes of the woman who tolerated you only out of love for my father." The room went deadly silent. Charles looked between his son and his wife. Torn, trapped. "William, your grandmother, she wouldn't want the family torn apart over her jewelry." "You're right. She wouldn't. She'd want honesty, justice, the things she stood for her entire life. The things you're asking me to ignore so we can protect someone who doesn't deserve protection." The Archbishop cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, perhaps we should review the evidence." Before this escalates further, Whitmore laid out the documents. The inventory. The photographs James had taken. Margaret's sworn statement. The legal provisions in the late Queen's will. Everything organized, undeniable, devastating. Charles read through it all. His hand shook. When he looked up, he seemed to have aged 10 years. "Camilla, tell me this isn't true." "Charles, I can explain. Tell me you didn't take these items. Tell me you didn't go into her chambers in the middle of the night. Tell me you didn't violate her trust." Silence. Camilla's face had gone white. Laura was crying now. "The necklace still hung around her throat like evidence at a crime scene, I thought. ... Camilla's voice was barely a whisper. "I thought she'd want Laura to have beautiful things, to feel special. She never understood what it was like. To be on the outside, to watch others wear jewels while you had nothing. She gave you a crown," William said harshly. "She accepted you, welcomed you, smiled for the cameras even though it broke her heart to share my grandfather's memory with you. And this is how you repay her? By stealing from her corpse?" "William." Charles's voice cracked like thunder. "That's enough." "No, it's not enough. Not even close. She violated grandmother's will. That's a crime. A real crime with real consequences. And you're asking me to ignore it? To pretend it didn't happen?" The Archbishop stepped forward. "Your Majesty, Your Royal Highness, we have a duty here. Not to family, not to reputation, but to the law. The late Queen's will is a legal document. Its provisions must be honored. If they've been violated, there must be accountability. You want me to charge my own wife with theft?" Charles looked broken, lost. "I want you to do what's right," William said quietly, "like grandmother always did. Even when it hurt, even when it cost her. She put duty first, always. Can you?" Charles looked at Camilla, really looked at her, and something in his expression changed, hardened. "The jewelry will be returned. All of it, tonight, It will be documented, catalogued, distributed according to my mother's wishes. Exactly as written. Charles Camilla reached for him. He stepped back. You will not attend any official functions for the next 6 months. You'll say it's for health reasons. Rest, recovery. The press will speculate, but we'll weather it. And Laura, ... He looked at his stepdaughter. That necklace goes back tonight. You'll never wear royal jewelry again. Not from the collection. Not from the family. Do you understand? Laura nodded, tears streaming down her face. She fumbled with the clasp, removed the necklace, handed it to Whitmore like it burned her fingers. And one more thing, Charles continued. His voice was steel now. You'll apologize. To William, to everyone here, to the memory of the woman you betrayed. Milla's mouth opened, closed. For a moment, James thought she'd refuse. Walk out. Let the scandal explode. But then she saw William's face, saw the Archbishop's expression, saw her husband standing separate from her, alone, and she broke. I'm sorry. The words were choked, bitter. I'm sorry. I thought. I wanted Laura to feel special, to have something precious. I didn't think you didn't think about anyone but yourself, William finished, just like always. My grandmother knew. She tried to warn my father, but he wouldn't listen. He chose you anyway, and now look where we are. He walked to Margaret, took her hand. Thank you for loving my grandmother, for protecting her legacy. You did what I should have done. What I was too afraid to do. Margaret squeezed his hand. She knew you'd stand up when it mattered, Your Royal Highness. She told me. Said you had her strength, her spine. She was right. William turned to James and Patricia. You took enormous risks. You could have lost everything. Why? James thought about his daughter, about the uniform he wore, about the oath he'd taken. Because some things matter more than safety, sir? Some things are worth the risk. My grandmother would have liked you. William smiled. Small. Sad. She always said the best people were the ones who did right, even when no one was watching. The confrontation was over, but everyone in the room knew the damage ran deeper than missing jewelry. Trust was broken. Family bonds were shattered, and the monarchy itself had been shaken. The next morning, the palace released a statement. Brief, carefully worded. The Queen Consort would be taking time for rest and recuperation. No further details. The press speculated. Social media exploded with theories, but the truth stayed locked inside palace walls. James returned to his normal duties, but everything felt different. Guards who'd ignored him before nodded in greeting. Senior staff treated him with new respect. Word had spread. Not the details, but enough. People knew he'd stood up, that he'd risked everything for what was right. 2 weeks later, he was called to William's private office. Catherine was there too, the Princess of Wales. She smiled when he entered. Sergeant Thornton. Thank you for coming. William gestured to a chair. Please sit. James sat, his heart pounding. This could still go wrong. Powerful people had long memories, and Camilla was still the Queen Consort. Still had influence. Catherine spoke first. I wanted to thank you personally, my grandmother-in-law. The late Queen, she meant everything to us. Knowing that someone protected her legacy, even after she was gone, means more than I can say. She opened a velvet case. Inside lay the sapphire necklace, the one that had started everything. She left this for me. In her will, with a note, she said it was worn at moments that changed history, that it should be worn by someone who understood duty, who would honor what it represented. I never got to wear it, Catherine continued softly. Never got to thank her, but because of you, I will. At the next state dinner, and when I do, I'll think of her. And of the people who loved her enough to fight for her memory. William pulled out an envelope. This is from my grandmother's estate. She established a discretionary fund for palace staff who showed exceptional dedication. The executors have authorized a grant for you. For your daughter's education, whatever she needs, university, private school. It's all covered. James felt tears sting his eyes. Sir, I didn't do this for money. We know. That's exactly why you're receiving it. You did it because it was right. My grandmother valued that above everything else. She'd want you to know your daughter will never suffer because you chose honor over safety. There was more. A promotion. A new assignment. Head of security for the Prince and Princess of Wales. A position of trust and responsibility. James accepted. Not because of the title or the pay, but because these people understood. They valued the same things he did. Commander Patricia Rothwell was promoted to Director of Palace Security. The first woman to hold the position, her first official act was implementing new protocols for protecting royal collections, stricter oversight, multiple authentication requirements, systems designed to prevent what had happened from ever happening again. Margaret Chen retired with full honors. The palace threw her a private ceremony. William and Catherine attended. So did James. Margaret gave a speech. Short, direct. I served the late Queen for 40 years. She taught me that service means sacrifice. That duty means doing hard things. That honor isn't just a word. It's a choice you make every day, even when no one's watching, even when it costs everything. She looked directly at Camilla, who sat stiff and silent in the back row. Some people understand that. Some never will. But for those who do, who choose the hard right over the easy wrong, you carry forward something precious. Something that no title or crown can give you. Integrity. The applause was thunderous. Genuine. Camilla left before it ended. No one noticed. Or if they did, no one cared. The scandal never went fully public. The palace was too skilled at managing information. But whispers circulated. At dinner parties, in private clubs, among people who mattered. Everyone knew something had happened. That Camilla had been caught doing something unforgivable. That she'd been punished. Her public appearances became rare. When she did appear, crowds were noticeably cooler. No cheers. Polite applause at best. The British public has long memories. And they'd loved the late Queen. They sensed betrayal. Even without knowing details. 6 months after the incident, Laura's engagement was quietly called off. No official reason given, but rumors suggested the groom's family had concerns. About connections, about character, about what it meant to marry into that particular branch of the family. Charles looked older, more tired, but also, somehow, clearer. He threw himself into his duties with renewed focus, as if trying to make amends, to prove something to the memory of his mother, to show that, despite everything, crowns still mattered. William and Catherine wore the late Queen's jewelry at state functions. Each piece a statement, a message, that her legacy lived on, that her values hadn't died with her, that some things were still sacred. James continued his work, protecting the people who needed protecting, standing guard over what mattered. His daughter started at a prestigious school, flourished, made friends, dreamed big dreams. She still told people her father protected the royals, but now she added something new. My daddy made sure the Queen's wishes were honored, even when powerful people didn't want him to. He says sometimes the right thing is the hard thing, but that's what makes it right. 1 year after that midnight confrontation, James was patrolling the palace grounds. It was 3 a.m. The same time he'd heard those sounds a year earlier. The same darkness, the same silence. But this time when he walked past the late Queen's chambers, they were locked, sealed, protected by new security systems that couldn't be disabled. Inside, her jewelry collection had been properly distributed. Each piece given to the person she'd chosen, her wishes honored exactly as she'd intended. James paused at the door, put his hand against the wood. We did right by you, ma'am, he whispered. We kept our promise. In the silence that followed, he could have sworn he felt something. A presence. A warmth. Approval. Maybe it was imagination. Maybe it was exhaustion. Or maybe it was the spirit of a queen who'd spent 70 years teaching people about duty, honor, and the courage to do what's right. James smiled, continued his patrol. The palace slept around him. But he walked a little taller, stood a little straighter, because he knew something that no title or position could give him. He knew what it felt like to serve something bigger than himself, to protect not just people, but principles. To stand up when it would have been easier to stay silent, to choose the hard right over the easy wrong. And he knew that somewhere, somehow, the late queen was proud of that. Proud of him. Proud of everyone who'd fought to honor her memory. The night was quiet. The palace was safe. And the crown, tested by scandal and betrayal, stood a little stronger because a few people had chosen courage over comfort. Some stories end with triumph. Some end with tragedy. This one ended with something rarer. Truth, justice, and the knowledge that even in the darkest moments, there are people willing to stand up for what's right, no matter the cost. No matter the risk. Because that's what honor means. That's what duty demands. And that's what makes the difference between those who wear crowns and those who deserve them. The sun rose over London. Another day began. And in the palace halls, people went about their work. Most would never know the full story, never understand what had really happened, but they'd feel the effects. The tightened security, the renewed emphasis on duty, the sense that something had changed, something important, something worth fighting for. And in a small apartment across the city, an 8-year-old girl got ready for school. She put on her uniform with pride, because she knew her father was a hero. Not the kind in movies. The real kind. The kind who did the right thing when no one was watching. The kind who protected queens. Even after they were gone, the kind who proved that honor still mattered. That truth still won. That courage still made a difference. And that in the end is a story worth telling.